Greetings and salutations. You are listening to the Into the North podcast, where we take a look at the competitive side of the Commander format, also known as cEDH. I am one of your hosts, Lyndon, aka Noobzors, and today I am joined by my co-hosts, Matt, aka Null.
What's up?
Reed, aka Sick Robot.
How you doing?
And Morgan, aka Spleenface.
Hey, hey.
And in this episode, we will be doing an Ikoria and Commander 2020 set review. As with previous set reviews, we're only going to be touching on a few cards and not doing a deep dive on the entire set. Just more of the greatest hits and some cards that we just want to discuss. But before we get into that, what have you guys been up to since the last episode?
Well, I've been enjoying some of these new cards.
You know,
Definitely some spicy stuff.
staying inside a lot.
Yeah.
Put in a lot
Lots
of
of-
great time to get some brewing started, right?
Have you debuted any of these new brews, or just kind of like messing around with stuff?
I played Ukima and Kazur Food Chain on the Notion Thieves on Tuesday.
Nice.
And
Which, I mean,
so far
let's
that
be
deck
honest.
has a 100% win rate.
Can we really call it a brew? Come on.
Hey, there's some stuff in there.
Isn't the whole idea of that deck that you're just playing no dead cards? You're taking away everything from Food Chain Sliver that could have made it a brew.
There's a steel enchantment in my brew.
Dude, let me just
Fancy.
change 3 cards from a standard list and call it a brew. You know, that's
In
our
fairness-
standard for
In fairness,
Classic.
there wasn't a
these days.
standard list for this deck before. Like, there still really isn't.
Yeah, fair.
So it's not like I took an existing list and just changed 3 cards. I made an incredibly obvious list and then changed 3 cards. It's slightly different.
Beautiful. I like many other people, I'd say about 90% of the cEDH population, like them, have put together an online kitten list.
For
in order
what
to test
list?
it out. An online kitten list online to play.
Kitten?
Kinnan, Bonder,
Oh,
Prodigy.
Kinnan. Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
I was just hearing you wrong.
No.
Yeah, first
Yeah.
I heard
Is this a
kitten.
new card that I'm not even
Yeah.
aware of? Super secret spoilers? Okay.
But yeah, I mean, like 90% of the cEDH population. I'm working on a kitten primer. No, not really.
The Salt Monolith go burr? Is that-
Yeah, it's the one. I mean, also sort of like, dice rolling on hitting Jin Cataxius and Consecrated Sphinx and stuff off the top.
Nice.
Because why not, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
why would you pay 6 mana for a Consecrated Sphinx when you could
When
pay
you can
7
pay
mana for a
7 mana for a
Consecrated Sphinx?
or 7 mana for a Thrasios. How about that?
Oh,
That's a great one.
Honestly, that gets me going.
let's
I mean,
jump
that's
into
that's
housekeeping, guys.
that's basically just
Let's
Kenrith,
move
right?
on to housekeeping. We'll have
Touche.
plenty of time to discuss Kinnan later on in the episode. So,
Yeah.
obviously, our housekeeping always filled with our new patrons. So, I want to give a big shout out to Scott M.
Forrest J.
And to Cody K.
Thanks, guys, for becoming patrons. Also, I just want to give an extra special shout out to Scott M because he became a patron because he lost a bet to me, and
Beautiful.
he paid up. So
Man.
respect. For
Lynn's putting in that marketing work, huh?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how you're supposed to do it, right? It's
Yeah.
not
that.
like
Just win bets.
don't
Yeah.
offer stuff that people want.
No,
or put
no,
out
no,
good
no.
content. Just like bet
gamble.
people.
Just gambling.
Dude, gambling on myself. Okay.
Well,
That's
okay,
not-
I
that's
think-
not a gamble.
I think now we have to know what was the bet.
It was on whether or not I could hit a certain level on MTG Arena. It was on whether or not I could hit Mythic. And it was like right after the set release, and I did it like in a day because it was pretty easy with just people
Whoever-
playing random garbage.
Whoever made that bet against you clearly doesn't know how much time you can sink into MTG Arena.
Okay, well, that does it for housekeeping. And let's just go on to the main topic because we don't really have any new developments to discuss. So we've kind of broken down the set. We've combined them together. So we're doing Ikoria and Commander 2020 and not like separating them. But we've broken it down into 3 different categories. So we've got the commanders, our top picks, and other. And the majority of the time is going to be spent discussing the top picks and commanders. But the other category, we're going to, maybe only touch on things briefly. But yeah, it's interesting. So let's just jump right into commanders. And as Morgan mentioned earlier, I think there's one standout set of commanders, and they're a partner duo.
And
I'll throw it to Morgan for this one.
They're not exactly stand out for any reason pertaining to how interesting they are to build, how unique their mechanic is, anything like that, really.
No, so we've got Kima, Stalking Shadow, who is a 2/2 whale wolf that casts for 1 blue and a black. It cannot be blocked, and when it leaves the battlefield, it deals X damage to target player, and you gain X life, where X is its power. And then we have Kazur, Ruthless Stalker, who says whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature, who is a 3/3 human warrior for 4. So we're in Sultai, and we finally got a commander that is a hard food chain outlet on its own.
Whoa.
In the right colors.
Oh, man.
Oh, is that what you're gonna say?
Matt, you preempted me. You saw where I was going. Was it too obvious?
We finally got a commander who's a hard food chain outlet who also lets you play Demonic Consultation and Tainted Pact in your deck.
See, I can still get Morgan on that one, because Food Chain Leva exists.
And Food Chain in your deck.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, so with these commanders, initially I was kind of thinking that it's not completely obvious that this is the default food chain build. And I don't know, I haven't talked to the
I'm
premier
not sure
food chain experts on whether or not they've come to a consensus on that, but my thinking was that you do get the hard outlet, but you're foregoing obviously the access to white and red, which is not nothing. Your Pyroblast, Red Blast, Vexing Shusher, Squee.
Well, yeah, the big one is
you're missing
Squee.
Squee. Yeah, it's the third outlet.
I think, the it's not so much you lose Squee and Red, but actually your Tainted Pacts and Demonic Consultations are still a lot more consistent because you don't have to worry about exiling your outlets.
So it's like the one food chain deck where it actually doesn't matter if you cast Demonic Consultation and food chain is the bottom card.
Yeah,
like you still just get there.
Like in Sliver, there was a 20% chance at the least that food chain was below Oracle, Labman, Jace, and Twister, and if all of those were exiled, you just couldn't win. So, now we've eliminated that sort of risk. You just have to hit the cast from exile creature, though admittedly you only have 2 instead of 3, which means you have a 66.67% chance of hitting it rather than a 75% chance of hitting it. But the math still works out quite heavily in Ukima's favor, actually. Assuming, of course, that you haven't already drawn one of the pieces in the Sliver, which happens a lot and makes it a lot safer. But yeah, honestly, and the things that you lose. So yeah, losing Squee is unfortunate. The blasts and Shusher and Dockside were all very good, but not super critical. Food Chain existed without Dockside, without a problem for a very long time. You lose Enlightened Tutor in white, Dovin's Veto, I guess. But the 2 things that you actually lose that really do hurt are Avacyn's Pilgrim and Noble Hierarch.
Oh, that's actually really true. I mean,
point.
you also lose Silence, but yeah, Avacyn's Pilgrim and Noble Hierarch are pretty huge. And actually, along with all of that, there's actually a card that you miss as well that we've talked about before, even though we're also going to be covering it in this episode later on. But you lose that on Drannith Magistrate, which is actually a pretty large deal as well.
Yep, that was the first thing I thought too. Huge card.
I mean, it's not super in line with, I think, personally, where I think Food Chain should be positioning itself in the current meta, but I think it's also like just too good of a card to not play, and you'd sort of hurt just from not having it.
Yeah,
The
so
food
I
chain
don't think
builds are on Boreal
the
Druid,
printing
right?
of these commanders is going to negate the existence of people who want to, or negate the first food chain first sliver, like the sliver did to good old Niv Mizzet. May he rest in peace. So people should still be playing first sliver, at least for a bit until people decide on whether or not they're going to make a full switch, or maybe people will decide that it's just preference. But
I think
yeah.
that I don't think that it's clean enough that it will ever be like I have my suspicions about where people will settle, but will settle in like a 70-30 split, not a 100-0 or 99-1 split. And what I think is that how just aggressive you can be in, like, so with Sliver, if you were casting, let's say, Demonic Consultation with none of the pieces, that meant you had about a 50% chance of getting there. Now that's up to 2/3. And there's no risk that other than it being in the top 6. I'll use Tainted Pact instead of Demonic Consultation to eliminate that. There's no risk that a Tainted Pact finding you food chain leaves you unable to win ever. Like, you can't exile your pieces. So what that means is that you can just very actively tutor for the Forbidden Tutors and just go for it. And I think that's where food chain is best positioned in the meta, to punish people who are spending one more turn to develop, trying to play the mid-range or long game grind.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, makes sense. And if you want to hear more about our analysis on how the meta is going to develop and, how food chain and other decks might be positioned, go back and listen to our last episode.
I also think that, like, the huge thing, not just about like punishing people who are being greedy and, like, by default not having the grind potential. I think the other reason why you want to be faster with food chain, especially in the coming months and potentially like year or so, is that the more consistently you can get under a rule of law, the better, right?
We also have to be able to get under Draneth.
Yes, that too. But I think, like, I guess actually they're like fairly comparable in density at this point, just because of creature tutors. So yeah, it's like you want to be able to get under Draneth and rule of law as consistently as possible. And in a lot of metas.
And the one value engine that's a stacks piece for food chain, which is like my big worry, which is Ristic Study.
Yeah.
Great card. No. Fantastic card.
Have you ever been playing food chain, sitting at a table, and there's a Ristic Study, and you're like figuring out how you're going to remove it, and then someone plays another Ristic Study, and you're like, oh no.
No!
I wonder, is because it kills as part of the thing, I wonder if there's any chance you can kill somebody before they draw too many cards off of Ristic Study.
Probably not, but the thing is that you don't have to resolve anything that isn't creatures anymore, which is nice.
So it's just fighting against them finding Pact and Force of Will.
Yeah, and some decks don't run Pact, and like if they've already used one, you'd need access to both your Cast from Exile creatures, but this is where it's unfortunate that you don't have Squee, because Squee doesn't lose to Force of Will. But
yeah. Okay, well, time to move on to the next commander on our list, and that is Riel the Everwise. So Riel the Everwise is an 0/3, casts for 1 generic, blue, and a red. It's a legendary creature, human wizard, and Riel gets +1/+0 for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard. And the important text, whenever you discard a card, whenever you discard 1 or more cards for the first time each turn, draw that many cards.
It's super cool.
Yeah,
and it's even more important text, it's a 0/3.
Block Timid, boys.
So you have a good Izzet commander that can block Timna. Finally.
I just think that
and lives through Pyroclasm. Oh my god, dude! It's just rubbing it in Mizzix's face. It's just like
Riel really seems to be one of the interesting. One thing I really like about Riel is that it's doing something and pushing you in a direction. It's very Gitrog-esque, where it's pushing you in a direction that's outside of the standard sort of shenanigans.
So
You can't just slot in consult, so it's going to force diversity on that front. But it really also pushes you in a direction of kind of like anti-meta cards.
so it also like
Yeah.
it also
Bree, go ahead.
yeah, Riel also sort of building on that point, it aligns with a lot of the way that I like to see new commanders printed, and I outlined this in the episode that we did with Scotty from Notion Thieves. Really good episode that we ended up doing on card design and commander design, and it really falls into the category that I really like, which is commanders that immediately make a wide swath of cards that have historically been unplayable or are not useful for anything into cards that are super useful or playable.
Yeah.
Like it's the same sort of thing that like Feather does, right? Where Feather immediately makes all these targeted cantrips super viable and like really interesting, and like you suddenly have a lot of ways to build with the deck. Riel sort of does the same thing, where there are all these cards that historically don't do anything and have never been played, that Riel suddenly makes like cards that you can actually play in a deck, and it's super interesting when that stuff gets printed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It also makes cards that are already good much better.
Yes, which is
Like
the other
Wheel
part
Fortune.
of that. Yeah. I mean, like Faithless Looting to draw 4 is just like pretty good.
Yeah.
Also
medium at least.
yeah, not terrible. Also, I've been saying this every single time to anybody that ever brings up Riel, is I love the fact that Firestorm is a viable card now. That you can play Firestorm in a deck, because that card is so sick.
Yeah, I think the strengths of Riel really are the low to the ground mana cost. So obviously we've discussed Draneth, and the lower costing your commander, the sooner you can get it down, the less likely you are to get blown up by Draneth. Now, unfortunately, being in Izzet, you're not having access to the green mana dorks. You don't have the ability to get a turn 2 Riel super consistently. So you are still a bit vulnerable to Draneth, and this deck is definitely built in a way that it's relying on the commander a lot. So there is that vulnerability, but when she sticks, the value she generates is immense, and she's able to play around a fair amount of stacks pieces and play some herself. So she can be running obviously the land hate, so Back to Basics, Blood Moon. She can play okay into a Rule of Laws in terms of just valuing, but
yeah,
trying to win the game is a bit difficult. And I think her biggest weakness is actually just trying to win the game consistently.
Yeah, that's definitely the big one. I mean, that's historically been the Izzet issue, right? It's always difficult for Izzet to win the game. And the fact that she doesn't provide half a combo in the command zone, or access, like easy access to combos in the command zone, is a bit rough. But honestly, like, I think that's probably fine, and I think there's probably ways to build her to get enough density where, like, you can just start, like, cycling hands really easily and get there. That's also, like, something that we didn't mention as well as, just, like, the discard wheels are also really good with her, and, like, let you dig very deep very quickly. So, like, casting a Wheel of Fortune with, like, 6 dead cards in your hand nets you, like, 11 cards.
Net you 7.
Sure, but like 11 new cards, right? Like if you
yeah, I think one thing people need to make sure is that they're doing the math correctly on Riel, because I've seen some, like, if you go on like cEDH Direct, you look up what people are running in Riel, and like, oh, maybe I'm gonna run Goblin Lore or something, right? And you really need to, and just because something has discard in its cost, or like Thirst for Meaning, Thirst for Knowledge, just because it's discarding cards doesn't mean it's something you necessarily want to run. You really want to look at how much each card is actually netting you compared to the mana you're putting in. So the wheel effects are obviously the ones that are gonna scale the best. So Wheel of Fortune has kind of a base of scaling, so it's gonna go +7, or sorry, +7. I guess, but the wheels that draw you equals the number of cards you discarded, then actually scale beyond what your that base threshold. So discard your hand, draw that many cards, and there's a few of those effects in red, and also in blue with like Tellurian Winds. So those are the cards that are gonna really if you're trying to do a lot in one turn or across multiple turns, those are gonna let you dig down into your deck quite deeply. So just when you're evaluating Riel, make sure that you're looking at the cards, I think, based on how much, like I said, you're netting on average.
Yeah.
Wait, why are those better than Wheel?
They're not better than Wheel.
Oh.
I think they just scale better than Wheel. So
they have a higher
depending
ceiling.
on the circumstances, right? You can dig deeper. So if you go to 11 cards in hand, right, you're going to go plus 10, plus 11.
I just salivate over the idea of casting Gush into Wheel and Riel.
Oh yeah, nasty.
Just disgusting.
I think one of the things that Riel really suffers from is because you're incentivized to run so many wheels. It's hard to keep cards in hand.
Well, and also I think
if you're trying to assemble like an A plus B combo, it's really difficult because you're going to want to discard them.
And there's also
you're running a few cards.
The
that are
issue.
Just selective discard.
There's the issue of there's tension between, okay, I want cards in hand so that when I hit a big discard my hand to draw cards, pay off, I'm drawing extra cards, but I also need to play out the mana rocks and lands in my hand, and all this other stuff. But I think the deck's super interesting. I think that it's gonna play in a really cool way, and there's a lot of interesting interactions with it that make it super interesting to play.
Underworld Breach, certainly.
That's the huge one, right?
I think that's the thing that people are leaning towards, yeah. Although the problem is, of course, that you need to be able to stick an Underworld Breach, and it's if it gets stuck in your hand early, how do you cast Wheels? So you need to find a way to regrow cards, and you're getting down a whole nother path, and you're like, oh wait, now not only does my commander potentially get shut off by Drannith, so does my win condition. And that's beginning to get a bit dicey, especially with Rule of Laws as well.
Yeah, certainly.
But yeah, that's going to be an interesting thing for the Riel decks to kind of see where they land after people have done a lot of refining.
Yeah, I have no doubt.
One thing too that we didn't mention is Riel gets big pretty fast.
Oh yeah,
you might not expect it, and yeah, sure, combat commander damage is kind of a meme in the cEDH world, but Riel starts hitting people.
I've in my Riel build that I was looking at, I've been seriously looking at cards like Wonder to just push through damage, just turbo wheels and kill people with the.
Quite honestly, I feel like Teamer Battle Rage is a fairly real consideration. Just for taking people out of the
gross,
game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like she's gonna land near the top of the heap for the Blacklist Storm decks, honestly. I feel like the engine is just so powerful, right? And she's so accessible to get down early and start generating value out of.
Yeah,
definitely my favorite commander from these two sets.
Yeah,
for sure.
Blue Red's like Grixis, but you have to try.
You actually have to make an effort.
Yeah.
Okay. Up next, we have Kinnan, Bonder Prodigy. So Matt, do you want to read these?
Sure, yeah.
Kinnan, sorry.
So Kinnan casts for green and a blue as a 2/2 human druid that says whenever you tap a non-land permanent for mana, add 1 mana of any type that permanent produced. And then 5 and a green blue for an activated ability. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a non-human creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order.
So that's pretty neat.
Yeah,
you
were the one who in the discussing what we were doing, saying you're building Kinnan, testing her out. So
that was a bit of a meme, but also I have actually put in some games with it. I haven't invested a huge amount of time into the deck /build /whatever, but it's interesting. There's so first of all, there's a lot of ways to build the deck. Just because there are a lot of types of things that tap for mana in the game, right? They're mana dorks, mana rocks, temporary mana, from stuff that like cracks itself and does all that kind of stuff. So that's all super interesting. So the big stuff,
permanents that filter mana also start
permanents that
netting
filter mana turn into actual rocks, which is super cool. All that good stuff. So just to get a bunch of stuff out of the way for win cons and stuff. So Kitten's really cool in that Kitten combos with Basalt Monolith. Because Basalt Monolith taps for 3, untaps for 3. Kitten makes a tap for 4, so you net infinite colorless with it. And then you just need to find an outlet for the colorless. Typically, Kitten can use, like, find a Thrasios or something in a deck to outlet and actually win the game, which is pretty neat. And you can
finding Thrasios, oh god.
Just finding finding a single card that gives you infinite colorless is just like a like pretty good in a lot of cases anyway. So yeah, it's not bad, especially because you can like pay blue-green in a bunch of times to search through your library to do that stuff. Kitten is also really good with Freed from the Real in a lot of cases. Straight up just Freed from the Real combos with Boreal Druid with Kitten in play, which is super cool. Same thing with Pemenzora, same thing with Bloom Tender, and there are a couple of other 2-mana dorks that do it. I think Paradise Druid does it, and then a couple of other ones, which is sort of cool. So
you said
that's
Boreal Druid, I assume.
Yeah, I was like Boreal
Did I say
Druid.
Boreal Druid? Sorry,
Yeah.
I meant Birds of Paradise. Birds of Paradise, Paradise Druid, Bloom Tender. Is that all the ones that I meant to
Unfortunately,
say?
not Arbor Elf.
That's the ones that I
is
meant to say. Yeah, that's sort of a rough one. Unfortunately, it doesn't multiply land mana, so that sort of sucks. But you know,
Maraleaf Pixie?
that also does it. Yeah.
I mean, I'd consider it.
Yeah, no, definitely. So yeah, like there's a lot of interesting stuff for the deck. I feel like there are a few different directions as well. I mean, you can really lean into the Freedom Real stuff and like do a bunch of dork mana and that kind of stuff. But also Kinnan turns like the 2-mana signets and talismans into mana neutral rocks because they cast for 2 and tap for 2. So you can play like a lot closer to a type of like what would classically be like a blue High Tide deck, low color blue High Tide deck, except you're like using mana rocks instead for the same sort of stuff, and Kinnan's your High Tide. So that's sort of neat. I mean, like Kinnan plus a bunch of mana rocks is really good with a paradoxical outcome. Like really good. So, you know, and also just like turning a Mox Opal into a free mana crypt that taps for colorless, or like Mox Diamond, Mox Amber is like nuts in the deck. Like you have a lot of options. Springleaf Drum is great with it.
Letting Arkham's Astrolabe actually net mana, disgusting.
Yes, Arkham's Astrolabe netting mana is really good. Like way too good. It's awesome. And then like also it's an outlet for Ice Crown Scepter and that kind of stuff. So like there's a lot of ways to there's a lot of different directions to take the deck in. What I know, and I can tell you for sure right now, because I don't think any of that's ironed out, and I think it's going to take a long time to figure out like what the best build of Kitten is. What I will tell you right now is that the deck makes a shitload of mana, like like a lot of mana very quickly. As in like in Goldfishing, I've untapped with like 10 mana on turn 3.
Dude, time to run some Eldrazi. Let's just hard cast bombs. EDH as it was meant to be.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Cool. So last on our list we have Callum.
Oh, okay. Actually, sorry. Before we get to this.
Okay.
No. It's actually I remember I was gonna ask this question and I totally forgot because of reasons. But because I have my own bit of opinion on this, but I'd like to ask you guys, do you think Kitten is going to end up being better relatively in the command zone or in the 99-98 of like mid-range green decks? Because I think it's like an interesting question, right? Like Kitten's really good at multiplying mana advantages. And if you're in like a Thrasios deck where you're looking to play a lot of dorks anyway, right? Like Kitten gets really good really quickly.
I'm trying to evaluate it relative to something like a Biomancer's Familiar or Training Grounds, and
it's certainly worse at being a Biomancer's Familiar and a Training Grounds in my opinion. But I think what makes it great in the 99 is it also functions as half of a combo, with Basal Monolith.
Yeah.
But
No, that's tough. That's tough.
I just have a hard time picturing myself putting Basal Monolith in a Thrasios deck.
Fair.
It's not the worst thing to do, you know?
So you can also, I think it also is sort of cool because there are decks that, like, there are Thrasios decks that have played Free from the Real, right? So I think it's, like, maybe not so much that there's Oracle around, but I mean, like, there's probably space to, like, explore that a bit. And I think Kitten's, like, really good in a Free from the Real Thrasios deck, because it turns your birds and noble hierarch into carriers for it, which is sort of good.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I'm just gonna
and
go
also
ahead
if you're
and say
like,
I think Kinnon's better.
if you're also on Zerda, sorry, and like if you're also on Zerda, it is another half. Like you're doubling down on the Basal Monolith, so there is a bit more reason to justify it.
And another thing I want to highlight about this is that I think this is going to be a fantastic budget option for people who like want to get into the format. Wherever they play, they're not able to proxy, and they don't have the money to drop on, you know, a playset of duels and fetch lands. And
Sure.
like this,
Yeah,
it synergizes so well with dorks, which are typically much cheaper than like the rocks. I mean, obviously you still want the rocks. It's 2 colors, so you don't need a super expensive mana base. And it's combo pieces and outlets. Well, I guess now Thrasios is lol.
Sure, but you can use, like, Spectral Sailor, sure, whatever.
Yeah, you can use whatever you want. So like I think this will be a really, really great option for someone who like wants to build a deck for, you know, $400 or $500 rather than like 4,000 or 5,000.
That's a really astute observation, and I don't think that was something that I was considering at all.
Yeah, that's leave it to Morgan to think of the budget players and the health of the format overall and getting people in. Good job.
Yeah, Reed, really, shouldn't this be you?
Yeah.
Okay, well, back to where I was going. Next card and final card in our list of commanders, we've got Callum, the Storm Sire, and Morgan. This one's for you.
It is. Okay. So Callum, the Storm Sire, casts for 1 green, blue, and red, is an elemental dinosaur who is a 4/4, and has, whenever you cast your first instant spell each turn, if Callum, the Storm Sire, is tapped, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. And then it has, whenever you copy an instant spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Callum. So it feels like there should be some insane stuff with this. I'm still not sure what it is.
It's so close.
I mean, so one thing that's worth noting is that, like, it just, double counter spells are, like, really, really good. It's not quite as extreme as, like, Tygam and uncounterable counter spells, but someone trying to go off with Callum tapped and you representing a counterspell is facing down, like, potentially a really rough situation.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
And then there's obviously, you know, there's a decent number of cards that this will do really good things with, like, you know, Frantic Search, or any number of instant draw spells that are all, like, mediocre, but then when you cast 2 of them, suddenly they become really, really good. But it doesn't seem to, because it's just the first and it's only instants, it doesn't seem to, there's not like that one card or that one thing you can do where it's like, oh, this totally enables that. It's like, well, you're still...
So I'd say there sort of is, but it's not like, there's not like the consistent thing that you can do with it, right? Because I think like something that's really powerful about it, and has sort of been explored a bit, is just like Court of Calling with it. Is pretty interesting, right? Like just you can, I don't know, you can tap it as part of paying for the cost, and it'll copy it afterwards, so you can just like core it for 2 parts of Kiki combo as soon as it comes into play.
Sure.
Or stuff like
that's
that.
A lot of mana.
Yeah. But I mean, like, it's like 7 mana total because you're tapping the Calamax for it. And then you can
Plus
convoke.
you're casting Calamax, so
But you can
it's
convoke
11
it.
mana total.
Sure. But just like it's like there are
Yikes.
things that you can do with it that are pretty good. But yeah, like I think it's just one of those cards, and there are a lot of these, but it's one of those cards where you're gonna forget one of the restrictions every time you play against it, and you always think that it's better than it is, and then you remember all of the restrictions, and you're like, oh, never mind. If we took
this
just
card
like
seems like worse Taigam.
if we took just like one of these things off, then like one of these restrictions off, then it would be great.
I mean, I think it's worse than Taigam, but it's in much better colors.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
This really misses, like Reed was talking about having Court of Calling, and the advantage of Taigam doing like turns shenanigans is that there's lots of redundancy with turn spells, and if you're doing stuff with like Mystic Sanctuary, it's pretty easy to assemble the A+B combo just through digging with the cantrips, but also just because, like I said, a high amount of redundancy. Whereas Calamax, you're really going to feel the lack of black tutors for Court of Calling or whatever combo you're trying to assemble, and there's just not there is Chord. Right, if you're like Reed said, so there isn't a lot of redundancy for Chord, so it's going to be hard to assemble your win condition.
No.
And then also the value engine aspect, like Taigam just seems to kind of do all those little advantages that we talked about a bit better. It's going to make it difficult for them to counter your counter spells if you've got a tapped Calamax. Well, as soon as Taigam comes into play, all of your instants and sorceries are uncounterable, so your counter spells are already all like Dovin's vetoes or whatever. And then in terms of advantage, you're really going to have to lean into the instant speed cantrips, which get bad pretty quickly. So you've got Opt, but then beyond that, you're starting to look at stuff like
Opt and
Peak
Brainstorm
And Peak. Yeah, Opt, Peak, Brainstorm. I mean, Brainstorm's not fantastic in multiples.
Yeah.
No,
I mean,
Tide's great. High Tide's a great multiple.
Yeah, High Tide is actually the fantastic one for the deck.
Yeah. It's also like a 4/4 and can attack if you really need to tap it.
True.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say also, it does grow is the big one, right? Like whenever you copy something, it grows. So whenever it's tapped and you cast an instant.
So it's like the world's worst scepter outlet.
Well, sure, yes, but okay, here's my view on like sort of what it does better than Taigam, right? As instead, like in addition to just being in better colors, right? I think Calamax plays the hold up mana and do stuff on other people's turns part of control better than Taigam does.
Yeah, the fact that you have to cast all the spells you want to copy on your turn is a big drawback in Taigam.
So like you have this very comparable ability of your counter spells are basically uncounterable, or in this case take a very large effort to deal with.
Well, I mean, it's the difference. Like they can also remove Taigam, so they need 2 pieces of interaction for one you have.
Yes. But like, so it does the very comparable thing of making your counter spells effectively uncounterable, and it sort of does the same thing of like copying your spells, except it lets you copy spells in a less explosive way, but a much more consistent way when you're holding up mana and you're just passing turn to do stuff on other people's turns.
But it also can't copy like it has a restricted type of spells it can
yes,
copy.
that's the sucky part.
Well, you've also got it's not just the restricted, so there's
Well,
that aspect, but also if you're holding up
turn,
mana, if you're using your counter spells, then you can't also use Calamax's ability for value that turn.
That's like not a big deal though.
No, that's not a huge deal. I wouldn't say like that sort of comes with the territory and playing control. But like
if you're playing control, you definitely need to be gassing back up.
No,
right?
but what I'm saying is like every turn cycle. So in Taigam, you can't a lot of the time you can't both hold up mana and then if nothing happens, also get something back or like get a lot back and gas up, because Tigum only copies on your turn when you've attacked with him. In this case, you attack with Calamax, you hold up mana, and then if nothing happens that you need to counter that turn, you can still gas up by casting an instant on people's end steps, right? Like you can cast an instant speed like X draw spell, and you double it on the end step, as opposed to Tigum having to commit on his turn to whether or not he's going to be holding up X amount of mana, right?
Tigum can also
and getting a large payoff.
Tigum can also just dump a bunch of like cheap cantrips, and the sorcery speed ones tend to be a bit better than.
Oh, sure.
Calamax can play dorks.
I'm going to be completely honest. I don't think Calamax. Don't think Calamax is actually better than Tigum, but I think there are real areas where he does the control thing better than Tigum does.
No,
I think the play patterns for hold up mana, like draw go control, are a lot better in Calamax than they are in Tigum.
Yeah, and I think the one last thing that I want to bring up in terms of Calamax versus Tigum is that if you are doing like a Cord win con or something, it doesn't his ability doesn't afford you the protection for your win con that Tigum does.
It's also super unfortunate that you can't.
Kind of an obvious downside.
Super unfortunate that you can't attack him to tap and then Cord for Kiki. I mean, I guess Cord.
Cord taps him. That's the whole thing. Yeah,
but like if you had some other, I guess
instant speed creature tutor.
Yeah, maybe there are.
No, I think Cord's the only one. Yeah, I can't think of another.
Anyways, yeah, Calamax seems cool.
It seems interesting. He's definitely jank, but like I think he's better than it. I don't know. It's better than a lot of like teamer stuff that we've seen before. I don't know.
One day they're gonna print a good teamer Spellslinger Storm Commander.
I mean, this is close. Double high shouting seems not bad. Maybe you just play Calamax as like 4-color brawl.
Oh,
maybe that's just what you do. Whatever. All right. Moving on.
Okay, so that wraps up our discussion for commanders. And up next, we've got our top picks category. And so this is the cards we think from Ikoria and Commander 2020 that are going to make the most impact in cEDH. Almost auto-include tier. So yeah, we'll get into we'll jump into discussion here. So number 1 on our list is Drannith Magistrate.
Hey, who'd have guessed?
Talked about this card at length already. It's come up in this episode. We've talked about it in previous episodes. But yeah, let's jump into it. So I'll read Drannith Magistrate. So for 1 and a white mana, it's a 1/3 human wizard that says your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands.
And we've gone over the entire list of what this stops, I believe, last episode. But quick recap: can't cast commanders. Can't cast commanders, and it also stops everything else that like isn't consult. just if you're playing a win con that's not consult, and you're like, oh, can I win through Drannith Magistrate? Answer's probably no. Just generally.
Twister loops.
Yes, except how are you getting to the infinite mana for the Twister loops is the question here.
Bomberman.
No.
But yeah, I mean, like, okay. Also, I mean, like, for context as well, I think we've all had at least some amount of time playing against Drannith Magistrates at this point, and potentially playing with Drannith Magistrates in our deck. Yeah, I mean, it lives up to the hype, right? I think we're all in agreement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
it's one of those hype cards that you value extremely highly when it gets spoiled and it actually delivers.
Yeah, and it's also coincidentally miserable to play against.
I don't think decks have fully adapted to the amount that they should have for this card yet.
Yeah, it's like I honestly feel like most Thrasios and Temna decks at this point should just be on Neoform Drannith Magistrate. Like, I feel like that's just an auto-include package, honestly.
Absolutely.
So is this is this Inala's time to shine finally? We can unseat Kess as
Dude, okay, all right. Flash banned, everybody takes their cages and rips out of their decks, and then Draft Magistrate printed. Nobody wants to cast their commanders anymore. Easy. Get there.
Well, how about this? Thank goodness Flash was banned before this card.
Oh my god. Like, honestly. Jesus. Can you imagine playing against Oracle Hulk with a Draft Magistrate in it?
Oh god.
Yeah, it's okay, turn 2 Neoform. You're like, is it Drannith Magistrate? Is it Grand Abolisher? Is it Thassa's Oracle?
Are they just gilded drinking my shit? I don't know.
Dude, the fact that this is asymmetrical is
it's
just
the worst.
so
I hate
absurd.
it. It's so bad.
Yeah, and in Gitrog we're discussing like how many single target removal spells or, board wipes that we're going to put back in. And
like just
we've gotten to the point where we're like, yeah, Fatal Push, that seems reasonable. And it's like
it's not terrible.
Honestly, though, it does seem fine.
Dude,
I know. That's
Snuff
insane.
Out? Yeah, Snuff Out works. It's good enough, does the job.
Oh, it's absurd how much this single card demands to be answered simply because it's going to be in like every deck.
It's just like it's the worst. It's just like, do you want to play Gitrog? Nope. You want to play Sire? Nope. Kess? No. Kess once is already on board. No.
I thought my Fry memes died with Thassa's Oracle, but hey.
New targets on the menu, boys.
Yeah,
there's pretty much no reason to not run this card in
mind.
any of your white decks. That's what I think is kind of the most detrimental part. It's certainly a strong competitive card, and I respect that. But yeah, the fact that you have to run in all of your white decks does not feel good.
The fact that this card is a 1/3 is kind of a tilt as well.
You just can't class it away.
Dodges pyroclasms. So like I know I was helping helping them update the Godo primer, and I was saying like, okay, you should probably switch to more like Rasp, but you can't go into Clasms. Excuse me. So you can't go into Clasms anymore. You should be looking at like Sweltering Suns and the 3 damage Wraths. And it's like, dude, it just makes things such a pain in the ass. Dude. Like in Gitrog 2, you miss out on it dodges Cabal Pit and a bunch of like other things. The 1/3 body is just it's super annoying.
He just looks smug.
Oh, incredibly smug.
He has a smug look.
Also, though, Blasphemous Act, we cEDH now.
Dude, it's been in discussions. I'm not even joking. Blasphemous Act and Chain Reaction. That's the hot Godo debate. Which is better?
I'm gonna be pretty honest. From what I've played in Conquest, Chain Reaction and Blasphemous Act are OGs. So I wouldn't be surprised if heavy dork metas make them very good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's enough. We've channeled all of our hate into Drannith Magistrate.
We'll continue hating it for much.
Yeah, it's become like an effigy. But so our next 3 cards and top picks and our last 3 cards are all part of the same cycle, and this is the Commander 2020 cycle of free spells that you can cast when you have your commander in play. So our number 1 pick from this cycle, Matt, do you want to read it?
Yeah, Fierce Guardianship for 2 and a blue, instant, counter target non-creature spell, but of course, if you control your commander, you can cast it without paying its mana cost.
So,
yeah.
Before we get to the rest of this, I actually am not sure that this is the strongest. If that makes sense.
Arguments for.
I feel like the next one's actually stronger, but there are just fewer decks that can use it. Just because of the color.
So a funny fact about this cycle is like Drannith does a pretty good job at disabling the the condition.
Oh yeah, just incredibly good at just making these really bad. Anyway, Fierce Guardianship.
Bit of a.
Next one is let's get through them, I guess, before we actually.
Let's read them and we'll discuss them all in a
Next one is Deflecting Swat for 2 and a red. If you control your commander, you can cast it for free. You may choose new targets plural, for target spell or ability.
Or ability is kind of wild text.
Targets plural, spell or ability.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen that broad a retarget.
Yeah.
They're typically either restricted to just spells or only things with a single target, or sometimes both.
Yeah, Wild Ricochet chooses targets, but it doesn't. But you can't target abilities.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Morgan, the last one.
The last one is Deadly Relic, and it casts for 3 and a black, or without paying its mana cost if you control your commander. And it says exile target creature.
So I think let's first just kind of, I think Deflecting Swat and Fierce Guardianship are kind of obvious, and we can discuss those in a bit.
Oh, yeah.
I just put Deadly Relic on this list. One, because it's in the same cycle, and, you know, let's talk about these at the same time. But also importantly is that the exile target creature, you know, Swords to Plowshares is kind of the gold standard for, you know, single target creature removal in the format. But this effect is something that I think is legitimately playable now and much higher, you know, consideration because of Drannith Magistrate.
Yeah.
And having access to the ability to just remove Drannith Magistrates.
Well, I mean, also,
dude, a Deadly Relic is never going to exile. Yeah, a Deadly Relic is never going to exile a Drannith because you're probably not spending 4 mana on it. And if you are, then that sucks, but I guess you have to. And if you have your commander in play, you're absolutely keeping the Drannith because it certainly affects your opponents more than it would affect you at that point.
I can definitely see the case where, okay, although
what about
I was gonna say I could see the case where you'd play it in like a where if you have one of your partner commanders down and you want to get the second into play, you could Deadly Relic something. But in that case, you probably don't want to be Deadly Relicking it, or Deadly Relic is not usually going to make the cut in your 4-color partner deck.
Yeah.
The places where I think Deadly Relic is going to see play are things like Yuriko, which doesn't really have a problem running getting your commander into play.
And it's just nice to have the removal spell.
Gets around Drannith.
Yeah.
But also it's a nice, big CMC target to flip. But also I do think that just single target creature removal, like having access to the ability to remove things for free is still something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, so we're playing it in,
even if it's not just for Drannith.
We're playing in Curious Control right now as well, with the most recent update with these spoilers, because I think it's just really powerful in that deck, and we were sort of aching for efficient creature removal anyway, just because you need to be able to get commanders off the board and stuff like that, and you mostly have your commanders in play by default anyway, because you want to be gassing them, just because, they synergize with a lot of the stuff in your deck. And it's also, it's free. If you draw it off of a curiosity effect or whatever, you can also just fire it off for free on end of turn to get another, just cycle it, basically.
Another thing to consider with this card is that if there is a Drannith in play and you just want to permanently remove someone's commander, right?
Yeah, that's definitely also a thing that you can do, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, goodbye, Timna. You have to remove Drannith now as well.
See you, Gitrog. No, thank you. Let's never see that one again.
But I put together God Eternal Kefnet. Take that. I don't care if you exile it.
I think that's enough for Deadly Relic.
Especially for how not good of a card it is compared to the other two here.
So let's get into Fierce Guardianship and Deflecting.
So okay.
For I just want to ask a question first. Has anyone come up with a cute name for Fierce Guardianship in terms of either an acronym or force of commander, force of something?
FG.
Because it's sorry?
FG.
FG. Lame. One of our listeners come up with a good nickname, Force of Blank, for Fierce Guardianship. Something clever. I want that
Force of Fierce
to stick.
All right, someone who isn't Reed, come up with a good name.
Fierce Pact. Pact of Guardianship.
Commander of Negation.
Okay, but yeah, so a free negate.
It's a pretty good rate.
It's pretty good considering something like Force of Negation was already playable, and that was not playable on your turn. Something that you can just play a Thrasios turn 2 or a Timna with the Dork, and then be holding up a negate. Pretty amazing. And then the fact that it's also from here on out going to be able to be a free counterspell on your turn when you're trying to combo
That's
off.
a big one especially
Very,
for
very
proactive
powerful.
decks with Thrasios in the command
Yeah.
zone. Like if you're looking to aggressively combo or at least be like fairly proactive with not even just Thrasios, but low CMC commanders in general in the command zone, this is so much better than Force Negation.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also a lot like. Don't get me wrong, you definitely don't want to be paying retail for this, but it's like a lot less bad than having to pay retail for Force of Negation.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But I mean, even paying retail for Force of Negation wasn't like the worst case scenario either, right? You're only like 3 mana for a negate versus 2. Obviously, counterspell versus cancel, big difference. But
just
being able to cast it for 1 more mana than a negate and save a card from your hand in mid to late game, that's certainly reasonable. And Fierce Guardianship,
but I just meant like
same situation here.
Particularly in decks with like dorks and like for high color decks with dorks, decks with fast mana. 1 blue versus 2 in a blue is actually like a huge difference in how
really
difficult it is to hold up.
And if you're trying to be proactive around like a carpet, the difference between 3 and 4 blue is huge. What's funny though is with these 3 cards, you can't, or not that you can't, but you probably won't be playing them in your Anala deck.
Unfortunate. Yeah, that's the issue that I have with this cycle, right? It's
what are you
like
talking about? I take people's commanders all the time, and it doesn't have to be your commander, just a commander.
It's the Gilded Drake combo.
Wait, what? I didn't even realize that. Oh my god.
Yeah, the issue
That's strange.
Yeah, it's any commander. But it's like the issue that I have with these is sort of along those lines though, is that like I get it for casual where it's encouraging you to cast your commander and it's sort of like a default thing that like, oh, these are like Force of Wills that everybody can have because you're always having your commander in play anyway, right? That's sort of what the format does. In cEDH though, like it just punishes you more for not playing Thrasios. That's all these do.
Yeah, I didn't need any more reasons to play Thrasios.
I don't like this design from a casual perspective either. I don't think players needed encouragement to cast their commanders.
Yeah, sure. Like I don't necessarily think like it's healthy, but I don't think it's like breaking and I don't think it's like a huge shove in the wrong direction. It's just like, okay, you're just giving people more, like just giving more default power to a deck. Sure. Like whatever.
Well, but I think you're very much not distributing that power evenly across the colors.
Sure, that too. I think the green one is
that's just inexcusable. Why couldn't that have been why could that not have been just like a Nature's Claim or something?
For the record, the green one is an asymmetrical frog, which is like historically in limited, really good. Asymmetrical frogs are great in limited. In Commander, not so much. not
the white one is grants your creatures indestructible,
which is reasonable,
which is good and casual. Yeah,
good for casual.
Okay, and then let's talk about deflecting SWAT,
which is
and all the crazy applications.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So first of all, the fact that you can deflecting SWAT and freely redirect a fiery thing. Sorry, what's it called?
Fire Covenant.
Fire Covenant. There we go.
You can also redirect a Gilded Drake.
You can redirect Gilded Drakes, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Of course, redirecting Dovin's Vetoes and Abrupt Decays. Fun, great fun, but we have all been doing that for ages now with Narset's Reversal and other redirects. Fine. But like, yeah, redirecting just like a lot of stuff. I saw the other day somebody died to a redirected fishbowl. Like these are like it's a very real card. Like there are a lot of things.
Someone died to a redirected fishbowl and it wasn't the person who activated it?
Yes, because he had a counterspell on the stack for something else. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, this card, I think, just Fierce Guardianship, deflecting SWAT, definitely staple tier.
So I think
they really incentivize you to be in.
I guess the argument for which one is better is like, I would say like Fierce Guardianship has a higher floor, but deflecting SWAT has a much higher ceiling, like much higher ceiling.
Yeah, I'd agree to that. I'd agree that for sure.
So I get like it's what you value more in it.
I don't think we need to spend too much longer talking about these cards.
They're just
We can
really
kind of
good.
move on. It's kind of self-evident how good they are. But yeah, so that's our top picks category. Not super big, mostly just free spells and insane
Oh,
cape
hey, we're
bears.
just looking at that. Asymmetric cape bears. Good stuff.
So here's our next category is kind of just our other picks or cards that we wanted to briefly discuss or touch on, or just kind of we might not actually read out each card like we did for the top picks and
but we
commanders.
can. I can speed run this if you want.
Some of these cards have long text, so I don't think we're going to do that.
Yeah, let's take
if you
turns.
want to understand what they do, we'll read out the ones that we want to talk about more. But some of them will just say the name and then give a few short words on it. So if you want to understand what they do, just look them up on Scryfall or something. So first things first, we've got Zerda the Dawn. What is this? The Dawn Walker? Waker?
Dawn
Waker.
The Dawn
If I
Waker.
hear one more
Okay.
person call it the Dawn Maker, I'm gonna lose my shit.
So basically Zerda is just like a Biomancer's Familiar, but it discounts every ability in every zone across all card types,
Yeah,
which is
it's
pretty
like-
powerful.
It also has Companion, but
the
you're
companion
never gonna
condition is so
use it as
rough.
companion.
The condition's
Like,
very
Yeah,
rough.
it's
I
really
was like,
hard,
I was
yeah.
looking at it. I'm like, this doesn't seem too bad. And like, it's not. You just lose like 4 or 5 really critical
Yeah.
cards. It's like,
and also
okay, you're building your deck without like Fish, Ristic Study, Dockside, Sylvan Library, and then
like
you're
carpet, yeah.
yeah, Carpet, and it's like,
So many good cards, yeah.
That being
honestly, can I just say, thank God there are no
Yeah, I was-
competitively viable
I
companions.
was about to say that and also thank God there's no second, like there's no red white partner with an activated ability. Just thank God, because
Yeah, that would be
I would
pretty
have I have no I'm not looking forward, or I wouldn't want to play against a Thrasios X deck with Zerda as a companion ever. No, thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you can still put it in Kenrith.
Yes.
You could put it in Najila if you wanted. But then you'd lose a lot of your good combo
Why would
pieces.
you want to?
I don't know.
You would do that.
And then Druid's
Just so that you can flex
repository
and say you're
technically
running a
still works.
companion.
Yeah.
I guess Gigantha is probably the closest to a companion that doesn't hurt to slot
Yeah,
in.
Gigantha plus Sisay is like the closest to the thing. And I'm not even convinced that Gigantha Sisay is better than just Sisay on its own.
That's not. You lose like force
It's a
of will
cool
and a bunch of
concept.
stuff. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Zerda,
Yeah.
Biomancer's Familiar, number I guess 3
3.
because you've got Training
Which
Grounds.
is pretty
Yeah.
good, Also combos with base alt monolith, all that good stuff. And Grim Monolith.
Yep.
Cool.
And Grim Monolith, yeah.
Okay.
We have the
Next up,
Mythoses. All of them.
yeah, we've got a few. Oh, whoops! We should move this on our thing. Yeah, we've got 3 Mythoses that we want to discuss. There's 5, I believe, but so we've got Mythos of Snapdax, Mythos of Nethroi, and Mythos of Brokos. So the first one is 2 and 2 white, and it has like the secondary clause being of black red, so Mardu. The next one is Abzan, and the final one is Insultai. So the Mardu one
Is Armageddon?
basically-
No, sorry, not Armageddon.
No, it's
Cataclysm.
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 It's
Cataclysm.
no, it doesn't make you sacrifice lands.
But-
It's tragic.
Oh yeah,
Sure.
tragic.
Tragic arrogance.
But
Yeah.
it allows you, if you pay the alternate cost, allows you to select which permanents are kept for each player.
Which is sort
so-
of neat.
Yeah, if you're in like a, I don't know why you'd be playing Edgar Markov Razakats or whatever, but if you are, for 4 mana, this is something that you can use to remove a bunch of artifacts, creatures, and enchantments if they have multiples, and have them lose the best one of each. Or you get to have them. Sorry, I should phrase that as you get to have them keep the worst one of each.
There you go.
Which can be quite a strong effect.
I mean, it seems
I don't
fine.
think this is close to
But
being
like I don't
playable.
think it's like I don't think it's good. Honestly.
I think it might be playable in exactly Mardu decks.
I think
Play-
even
just
then,
as
it's
playable
like
as
iffy.
Mardu.
Yep.
Yeah. Fair
So-
I don't
point.
know.
The next one is Vindicate, except it doesn't hit lands. So I don't know. What do you call that? You call it
That effect
Angelic
doesn't
Purge?
actually exist, does it?
it's a
I I don't actually think it exists.
No, it's not an angelic purge. It's a. What's the worst? No, I'm sure it exists.
Okay, we're getting lost in the weeds here,
fine.
guys. Let's
It
let's just
literally
move on.
doesn't exist. It's a Vona activation.
sure. I'm gonna find the thing. You guys
It's a
go
meteor
on with this.
golem.
No,
But there isn't just an instant or sorcery that destroys target.
Wait, no, because
non-land
meteor golem hits lands, right?
permanent. No, non-land permanent
So
that opponent
Mythos of
controls.
Nithroid destroys target non-land permanent if you paid, green,
Full
white,
absent
and
for
black.
it.
Or
there
a
you go.
creature if
Next.
you didn't.
And then we've got, which I think is it's comparable in terms of like.
It's like
Beast
like
Within
an
and generous
it's
gift.
almost an anguished
So-
unmaking.
Oh my God. Drop it.
We'll stick with that.
This
Yeah, we'll
effect
stick with
doesn't
that.
exist.
Okay,
As I
Reed.
said last
Okay,
time.
Morgan. You guys hope you've had your fun. But yeah, it's similar to Beast Within and Generous Gift, except those cards really only see play in
And you can't stone ring
decks where
people
the
with
colors. Yeah. But I don't think you're going to be stone raining people that often with Beast
I mean,
Within, unless you're
it.
doing like Tasker
The only
stuff.
reason you're playing Bees Within is as an outlet, which means that you're probably aiming at
No,
lands.
you run it in like Yisan and stuff. But the problem is that this requires you to be in 3
Yes.
colors
The
to
only
get the
reason you
full
play
activation.
the only reason you play Beast Within in Abzan.
There you go. Is as an outlet.
Yeah. So not really playable. Don't consider this as like an Assassin's Trophy. The extra mana really is
It's so rough. That's so much
very
worse.
rough.
Yeah.
The last one is Mythos of Brokos, which is 2 and 2 green, and if you pay the additional colors, it's Sultai. So it's blue, black, double green. And it is return up to 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand, and if you pay the additional cost, you can search your library for a card, put that card into your graveyard, and shuffle your library. So I think this is kind of comparable to things like Gerard's Orders.
Yeah, sort of.
Or maybe like a Buried Alive, because you can kind of do some interesting stuff where you're like binning
it's
animate dead
it's realistic.
plus
it's,
a target or something.
It's realistically a final parting that costs 1 less mana.
No, it's very much not a final party.
Yeah, because
you
final parting
only
gets
search
to
for
find
one
reanimate.
card. This card, I tried so hard.
Oh, it's
It doesn't.
return up to 2. Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
just
Yeah.
the other way.
No,
yeah.
you only search for one card.
Yeah. Never mind.
We were talking about it for Muldrotha for obvious reasons, and we just could not actually get there on any sort of
Like reasonable
concise combo
combination
at
of
all.
things.
yeah, like because you need,
I think this card
you
needed to
need-
be an instant for it to be playable.
You need
And
one of the permanents to be in your graveyard already.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And like the things that you might actually want to find in return that could enable some sort of combo with it aren't permanents. Like if you could get a spell and a permanent and then cast a spell and do this multiple times or something, that might do something useful, but it's just not there because it's an entomb stapled to 2 nature spirals. So basically it's a bad demonic tutor stapled to a nature spiral, which doesn't feel like it doesn't seem like it's like when you put it that way, it doesn't sound like a card that's going to enable combos.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Okay. Next up, we've got Parcel
Really?
Beast.
Really?
Really?
I love this card. Although I don't actually, I'm not going to play it in any of my decks, but it's
as
just
far as strict categories go,
something that can
it's
be a
an
2
other.
CMC value
It
engine.
definitely isn't other. I'll put it there. Next we got Luminous Broodmoth, which is like a 4 mana Melira.
4 mana.
No,
It's
it's
not, I guess
not
you
Melira,
can say it's a
no.
Melira, but I was going to say it's closer to Machias.
yeah, it's more like a mechanic.
Yeah.
I mean, it does both, right? Like,
No?
what? Yeah.
It doesn't
combos
quite
with
Machias
persist
It
creatures,
combos
but,
with
like,
persist
if that's
creatures
what you
and
mean by it's a
undying
Melira.
creatures. Like, it combos with both.
Oh, sure.
Melira doesn't combo with Undying
No, I
creatures.
know, but I'm saying it it does both sides of the thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it also and it also gives things quasi undying if you have a way to prevent them from getting counters.
So if you have a Mike
Also
Chaos,
brings them back with flying, which is kind of
Yeah.
hilarious.
Yeah.
Fairy oofs can target itself, but it only brings it back with flying half the time. Airy oofs, sorry, not fairy oofs. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I don't think this card is gonna
I think
see
it's-
too much play.
I think it's
this card's insane in like casual.
I think it's a janky card that you're gonna find off of Court of Calling sometimes in Modern or Pioneer. And that's about it.
I think there's maybe like I don't know.
It
If
does,
there was some like Hulk pile, but I mean obviously Flash is gone.
it
And
does seem pretty gross in casual,
like
like
Abzan or something.
Yeah, it just
Like
brings
it's
all
all
your
out
stuff
protection.
back when you get Wrath. Yeah.
Yeah, there are definitely
With
some decks that I
flying?
remember like that would
Yikes.
absolutely love this card.
So next we have Fiend Artisan,
And I put this card on the list because
Which
I
is
wanted to talk about how
black green,
bad it is.
black green gets plus black green hybrids. 1/1 Nightmare gets +1/+1 for each creature in your bin, and then you can pay X and black green black hybrid, tap it, sack a creature, and search for an X CMC creature and put it into play. It's like a
And you
Or
can only
less.
activate that as a sorcery.
only as a sorcery, as Birthing Pod Claws, all that good stuff. It's another variant on Birthing Pod. It's bad Vanifar, bad Birthing Pod, bad Gisan, all that good stuff. I feel like people are overrating it in a lot of cases. I feel like it's really not good in a lot of decks. That being said, I actually feel like this is pretty great in Hulk decks right now. Hulk decks that aren't Brawls. 4-color Hulk decks, stuff that has access to Rector, I feel like this is pretty great in. Just because it's both a sack outlet to get Hulk off the board when it's stuck on board, but also you can just like go tutor for sack outlets proper or Academy Rector. Or like
It's so
miscellaneous
slow.
yeah, Grand Abolisher.
Grand Abolish is the big one as well.
Yeah.
Or like go find a Gilded Drake. Or Draft Magistrate for that matter. Turning dorks
certainly
into Draft
flexible.
Magistrate for 3 mana seems not terrible.
Yeah, unlike Birthing Pod, you get to pick the CMC.
also like
But
I
unlike Birthing Pod, you have to invest the CMC, and you can't like
Well,
reclaim,
sure, but-
so you can't sack a Timna and then go up to a 4-drop. You have
But
to
sack a dork,
you know,
cast a
pay
green
full
sun
retail
It's
every
like
time.
sack a dork,
I
cast a
do-
green sun CF.
I do also think this will see play in like Staxy Hate Bear decks like Blood Pod, or if there's something
Yeah.
people build in Abzan.
I think it definitely does
Just
help
like,
to
I have more dorks than I need at this point. Let's go grab, I don't know, Magus, Aven Mind Sensor, like
yeah, and just like
Thalia,
just,
Aethersworn Canonist, Dranith Magistrate, yeah, like any
Yeah.
number of.
I just think it's too slow in a lot of these
I
cases.
feel like-
having to it's incredibly
too.
like having to wait a full turn cycle, having to do it at sorcery speed.
I think it's too slow in a deck that isn't already looking to slow the game down.
yeah. I think it's like
I still think it's
comparable.
even slow in Bears decks.
It's comparable to like a Fauna Shaman or a Survival of the Fittest, but it's like better than a
except
No, no, no,
way
no, no, no.
way
it's
worse.
better than a Fauna Shaman for sure. Which
No,
it isn't saying much. Yeah, it
Absolutely
is.
not. Absolutely
But no,
not.
'cause
no,
it's-
no.
What? Sure.
Fauna Shaman in like a Razakat deck.
No,
you
I'm
get to
not talking.
actually
I'm not
bin
talking about it in the
things.
context of like binning fatties and using them as
Okay,
discard
one
outlets. I'm talking about them
Fiend
like in the
Artisan
context
activation
of
is
finding.
Is better than one Fauna Shaman activation, for sure.
Yeah, like it's like if you're using Fauna Shaman to find just like good pieces to get into play in like a sack deck or whatever, it's definitely better than Fauna Shaman, especially because you don't have to hold dorks in your hand when you're doing like you develop a bunch and then you drop it and then you can have an empty hand and still start generating
I
board.
think it's roughly I think in its best case scenario, it's only roughly comparable in that best case scenario. So in the scenario of like Hulk and being able to sacrifice things with it, I understand. But in that best case scenario where that you're describing, where fauna, it's you're sacking a dork in play to find something, or getting rid of a dork in hand with Fauna Shaman, I think they're just pretty much very, very similar. I don't think it's clearly better than Fauna Shaman.
I do, because you don't have to cast what you're getting.
Yeah, that too.
But you have to spend the mana to do it, so
Right,
you're
but
not
you
vulnerable
don't
on the
Get
stack.
counterspelled. Yeah,
But
Right, so whoops, it's a
you
Grand
can also
Abolisher.
hold up Fauna Shaman at instant speed and kind of determine what you're going to get.
but I mean,
later.
also in a deck
Right,
with Blood
but-
Pod though, like
So you can do tricks
no,
with
no,
Fauna
but-
Shaman for like Aven Mind
yeah, but
Sensor
also
or
in a deck
something.
with like Blood Pod, where you're almost always going to be on some number of mana producers, and you're almost always going to be on a Guy's Cradle, just because like the deck wants a lot of mana naturally anyway. There's a very real chance that if you let this resolve next turn, there's an Elishnorn coming out of it, or they're just putting a Linvala onto board without you being able to do anything about it. Like, I think it's a really powerful tool for getting around counter magic or forcing people to interact with it on the stack.
Yeah, I don't think it's a very powerful tool. I think it's a very mediocre tool, personally. I just don't think this card is very good. I think people are overhyping it a lot. I think it makes sense. I buy your argument for Hulk I think it's just about as good, if not worse in a lot of cases than Fauna Shaman. That's my take. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I don't think you're gonna convince me.
So,
But I'll eat my words if this card becomes a staple and is showing to be very strong. But I can't.
next up, we have a companion that's sort of wrecking every other format, but not ours. Which is Lurrus of the Dream Den. Basically, the companion cost is just you have to play 2 seams to your lower permanents in your deck, and it buys back a 2 seams to your lower permanent from your graveyard every turn. Yeah, I mean, like, it's really good in other formats where you don't have to play high CMC cards, or high CMC permanents rather.
And you can play 4 copies of all your low
four
CMC
copies of all your low cost things. And you can kill people with combat damage, and you don't have to worry about all these, like, having to play combos and stuff like that. In this format, it sort of it's really hard to make work, and the payoff isn't really worth it.
Yeah, I think there are 2 legal companion commanders, is that right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the other thing. It can only work with Ailey or Kartlov.
Yeah.
Because your commander has to satisfy the companion restriction.
Yeah. As far as Lurrus in the 99, though, it's a great card in Razaketh because it can, in most cases, replace Eternal Witness, and it's in much better colors because your primary combo.
And it also,
like the cat combo is in white-black, so you're not like sacrificing your LED for green.
and also the fact that this is actually really big. You can preemptively play it and get attacks in with Tymna rather than having to hold on to it. It's like
it provides this additional value that Eternal Witness really just.
And also, I mean, like the lifelink
Yeah.
isn't like that's not negligible, right? And especially in Razaketh, where like sometimes you do just run out of life for lines. Like having a lifelinky attacker that also like cuts down your need for Eternal Witness is sort of neat.
Yeah,
dude, I had
it
a
unfortunately
nightmare
doesn't
where,
block Tymna's.
No,
Tymna was a 2-drop, and Lurrus Thrasios Tymna was a viable.
Stop.
That honestly,
Dude, I feel like we don't actually have to. Lurrus isn't what makes that the nightmare.
no, not at all.
No, I mean,
It's
it just
Tymna.
exacerbates
Dude,
things.
could you just
right?
imagine if you could just consistently draw a card off your dork on turn 2? Oh, baby. But the one spooky thing that, like, I play Razakats and I was like, oh, I can test out Lurrus over Ewit, and I definitely will. Drannith Magistrate is a card, and you can't actually Razaketh combo through Drannith Magistrate, and you cannot.
You also can't return like brought back stuff if you're trying to do brought back.
I'm not.
loops.
No, I don't think anybody's actually getting brought back loops at this point.
You are in Sans Blue.
Okay,
Razakats.
and moving on.
okay, if you're playing Lurrus as your commander, you're definitely playing Broadback.
Yeah.
But there's no reason for that.
But yeah, like just the fact that you open yourself up to getting Drannith Magistrated feels pretty bad.
Yeah, it feels not great, honestly.
Yeah, you really want to make sure you exile that thing.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, you really want it gone.
Okay.
Um,
Next up,
I think
we have a.
Yeah.
Oh, are you?
no,
have more to say about Lurrus, or-
I'm just saying. I think this might be close to the end of what we're. No. Well,
Yeah, the rest of the stuff we can say like.
Yeah, I think we can just
two
blast through
words.
these
Yeah.
last ones.
because we have
Yeah. So
for the viewers at home, we have a lot of stuff on this page. We're probably not going to get through all of it. We'll cover the.
well, we can say
things.
we'll just list it very briefly. But yeah, so we've got 3 enchantments, and they're like the
wedge enchantments.
the wedge enchantments. Yeah,
Wedge, right?
I
Not
think
shards?
the most important of
These
these
are wedges.
is
I
Whirlwind
would
of
agree
Thought.
with that.
So we'll do this one first, then we can cover the last ones, really quickly. So Whirlwind of Thought for 1, and Jeskai. It's an enchantment that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, draw a card.
Hey, it's
So-
pretty good.
Play it
Yeah,
in
pretty
Jeskai Storm decks.
straightforward.
It's
value.
being slammed into Kitkar, and I think it will wind up in Elsha.
I wouldn't be
Because of
surprised.
how it synergizes so cleanly, because she lets you cast stuff at instant speed. You can stack up draw triggers when you're going off
Yeah.
to clear lands off the top.
It gets
Like
you
you
through
cast
patches of
cast
lands
cast
very
stuff,
quickly.
and then you hit lands, and then you just let a draw trigger resolve, and
Yeah, like Elsha wasn't necessarily having like the hardest time clearing lands at the top, but like this is just
Oh yeah,
icing. It's icing.
I have
Besides
some
my
memories, Matt,
personal
of you
experiences,
and a sensei's top, and just all the lands.
God.
Beside my personal experiences, yeah.
Okay.
I've abandoned that project.
I don't think there's too much else
No,
to
I
say
mean
here.
it's like the quintessential
gets
storm card, right?
Yeah. Next up, we have Titan's Nest, which is the Sultai enchantment. So that's for 1 and Sultai.
Basically,
At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard, and then you can exile a card from your graveyard to add generic mana to your mana
a
pool.
colorless mana.
Colorless.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry. And you can spend that mana to cast a colored spell without X in its mana
Basically,
cost.
gives all your stuff delve. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of
Pretty cool.
The problem is that you don't want to run spells that are really good with delve because you won't always have this enchantment.
Yeah.
So like
Mhm.
it's not like think about how low to the ground most cEDH decks are, and then how like rough it is to put in a bunch of stuff that works when you have this out to make it actually good.
I wonder.
Would you play it in Frog if it was in the colors though?
Yeah, I don't think I'd run this in Frog. In Sultai Frog. There's just much better things to be running.
No, sorry. Like if it was Golgari.
Oh, I still don't think so.
No, okay.
I'd maybe if it was 3 mana or 2 mana
Jesus
for that
Christ.
effect, but at
Yikes.
4 mana, I don't think I'd be running that.
I wonder.
And so
I wonder if you could
or-
play it in like some really large commander that takes a lot of mana and like use it as a ramp piece, and like that's your payoff.
well, that's what I imagine for Gitrog. What Morgan
Maybe-
was implying. It's
maybe
like,
you could, like-
want that for the ramp.
Maybe
right?
you could play it in like a Ramos deck.
No, you can't cast Ramos with it. Has to be a colored spell.
Oh, it has to be a colored spell?
Yeah.
Oh, that makes it so much
Yeah.
worse. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah, it's rough. And then so our last enchantment on the list is Death's Oasis, and it casts for Abzan. And it reads, whenever a non-token creature you control dies, put the top 2 cards of your library into your graveyard, then return a creature card with lower converted mana cost than the creature that died from your graveyard to your hand. And then it also has 1 and sacrifice Death's Oasis. You gain life equal to the greatest converted mana cost among creatures you control.
I need to
Kind of
play with this
interesting
card.
in that it's like a scrap trawler for creatures.
that also mills you, which is
Yes,
like
that's
could you
that's
imagine if
yeah,
Scrap
large.
Trawler
That's
milled
like-
you?
that is
Holy
very large.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Definitely interesting.
Spice.
Yeah.
Some
This
Razcat
card is
applications,
probably
possibly.
like might see play in some decks, but it's I can't imagine it being like a a key part of a combo or like a core piece of the deck. It's probably just going to be like a fringe piece that's like a value engine or fringe combo piece or something.
It does
Not
it
the main
really does
plan.
tick all the boxes with Razcat.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like life gain, graveyard value, and recursion.
It's close.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the next that wraps it up for the cards we're going to read, and then we're just going to kind of say we're going to give like each of us will cover one of these cards in order of me, Matt, Reed, Morgan, and just give our like brief description of the card and our opinion.
The
So,
order was for our benefit, not
Yep.
yours.
So first one is Kogla Titan Ape.
Sorry.
Kogla Titan Ape, and it's a 7/6, mono green creature. When it enters, it fights something. When it attacks, it destroys artifacts or enchantments, and it has a Team or Sabretooth ability. This is something that can see play in mono green
Exactly,
Zavala.
mono green Zavala.
Okay, next.
We have Luca, Coppercoat Outcast, 3 red, 5 loyalty. Planeswalker has kind of like a restricted polymorph effect. Yeah, I don't know where that would fit in. If anyone else has any ideas.
I think it's just like if you're running the Divergent deck, you can maybe use this as an additional polymorph, but it's pretty
we'll
weak.
See. It's pretty fat. Next, we got Tidal Barracuda, which is Grand Abolisher in mono blue, except it also gives everybody a what is it?
Vidalcan.
There we go,
Vidalcan
Vidalcan
Orrery.
Orrery. Basically, everybody can cast up at Flash, except on your turn, where only you get to cast spells. It's also 4 mana, which is a lot. But I mean, it's interesting, right? It's sort of neat.
Sure.
Maybe like
definitely.
Vanifar likes it. I don't know.
Yeah, that is
What-
interesting for Vanifar.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's not terrible
Next.
in Vanifar. Next up is Molten Echoes, an enchantment that casts for 2 red, and it has when as Molten Echoes enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Whenever a non-token creature of the chosen type enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of that creature. That token gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step.
Good for exactly Godo.
Yeah.
Moving on.
I'll put it in. Maybe it'll go in Anala. Who knows?
Next up, we've got Dismantling Wave. For 2 and a white, it reads, for each opponent, destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment that player controls, and it has cycling for 6 and double white, and when you cycle it, destroy all artifacts and enchantments. 3 mana, destroy, 1 artifact enchantment from each opponent. Could be playable as if people start running a ton of value enchantments
Yeah.
or
the games that go
artifacts
along
I'd
with
like
stacks
it a
pieces.
lot more if it was.
If there was an
though,
instant,
sorcery.
yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's competing against
Yeah,
things
I
like
mean that would be really good.
Force of Vigor and things like
And
that.
also,
So definitely
whatever
a
the Zur one
bottom
is.
option.
What's it called? Yeah, bad.
There's
yeah, sure.
Grasp of
There we
Fate
go.
is
Yeah,
meh.
it competes with
but-
Grasp of Fate.
yeah.
Anyway,
Or like
I really don't
honestly,
think it
like
does.
Heliod's intervention, I would probably play over this.
yeah, sure.
But anyways,
All right, moving on.
The next one is actually probably what
yes.
it competes with the most.
Yeah. Last but not least, we have Barrier Breach for 2 and a green instant. Exile up to 3 target enchantments. Cycling for 2. So super.
If people get
Okay,
really,
plus
if people
card.
get really out into the weeds on like Smothering Tithe and Ristic Studies and like composts,
Yeah, if the board's clogged
I feel like
up
it's
with
steel
Ristic
enchantments
Studies-
running
I
around
feel like it's
everywhere.
not about
Card
how
damage.
much people are playing those. It's about how frustrated a given pilot gets with people playing them. It's just like,
Yeah.
I'm sick of this. I'm putting Barrier Breach in.
Thankfully, it cycles, and also thankfully, it's an instant.
pretty much.
Okay, well that wraps it up for our set review. Very, very impactful stuff in our top picks, and the rest of it is kind of just meh. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of the year shapes out with what is it, Commander Legends?
The draft
the
set.
draft
Oh
set?
boy, I am.
Oh no!
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm nervous for
Honestly,
that one.
having
me
seen
too.
Draft Magistrate get printed, I'm not totally excited for that one. I'm gonna be completely
Yeah,
honest.
my excitement with every set has been replaced with nervousness.
Dread.
yeah, impending
Yeah,
dread.
that's not where you
Honestly,
wanna be.
man, the one thing that makes me more nervous than Dranath is like this trend towards cards that like really rely on having your commander. Like I feel like the commander text itself has been printed more than ever in the past couple of years. Like I'm talking specifically about like Fierce Guardianship, Deflecting
Yeah.
Squat, Deadly Relic right now. If like every new set has a card like cards like these where you have to buy the product because you have to play the next best commander like card, I'm worried about that.
Yeah, that could be rough.
Yeah,
Like Arcane Signet, like I know they're reprinting it, but it's like no one was happy about that.
Yeah,
Yeah, like before this,
Yeah.
there was like very limited and like very specific command. I mean, there was like Arcane Signet, but there was like the Lure Lieutenant cards from Commander 2014, Bastion Protector, but like it was stuff that synergized with your commander, not like made you want to have your commander in play for the sake of the card. And I feel like they've kind of reversed that now, where you want to, like it used to be that you would play those cards because they worked when you had your commander in play, and now you're like you want to have your commander in play so that these cards work, and the focus is on the card and not the commander, and it just makes another barrier to like decks that don't necessarily always want to have their commander in play.
Yeah.
Well said.
Okay, well, now it's time for everyone's favorite segment, Gut Check.
yeah,
Check.
Morgan.
Good
I'm waiting.
check.
Okay, so this question is a bit inspired by the quarantine, and it is physical magic overrated? You guys
No.
can
Don't like many people hate it.
When I say overrated, I don't mean like is it bad? I mean, you know,
like if the Magic
with access to MTG Arena, MTGO, webcam Magic with proxies, cockatrice. You know, are people putting too much value in actually owning the physical cards, or should or is webcam kind of going to be is webcam underrated, or are these other things underrated? Take it however you want. That's the question.
Sure. I think the physical cards are way too important for Magic at this point. Like as far as like a business, as far as forcing you to get out of your house to be social and put deodorant on and shower sometimes. Like it, and like the Magic economy. As far like I hate to say that, but there is like value in these cards, which you just don't get with online, and obviously not with cockatrice. Like, you just can't. I don't think you can necessarily set those aside. It's just so important.
Yeah,
and as a motivator for social experiences, also like. Yeah, you can certainly chat and socialize when you're playing over like webcam or Discord on Cockatrice or whatever, but it's definitely like not the same. Even simple stuff. I mean, not being able to see each other's faces makes a lot of, a lot of social things much less effective. But also, like, we still don't have a good solution for conferencing to allow multiple people to like speak at the same time, or like to not really listen. Like, everything's sort of, if you're having a conversation and two people talk at the same time, you can like kind of hear them, or like you can have a side conversation. That like does not work on Discord, and so it is much less social.
Reed?
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, there are aspects both ways, right? I feel, like I do feel like the attachment to the actual paper cardboard is overrated, and that could probably die if there's ever a true replacement for it. But yeah, like, I mean, there's stuff about IRL interaction that you only get IRL.
I will say that, there's definitely some over romanticization of the physical interaction. Like, it's like, oh, you're at your buddy's house drinking your beers. It's like, or we're at a local game store and like it's crowded and there's other people around us being loud, or like, and it's not like you can't drink and socialize when you play online or whatever.
Or like I'm stuck at a weekend tournament for an entire day and I don't want to be here anymore.
Yeah.
So my opinion, I think, is pretty close to Reed's, which is I think the face-to-face social interaction is very important, but I think the physical cards themselves are maybe a bit overrated, especially given how expensive things can get in the secondary market. That seems to me to just be a big indicator of how overrated owning the actual physical cards is. You see on the subreddit all the time, people like, oh, no proxies allowed, blah blah blah, or I can't get this budget. It's like, man, you know what? Just proxy to cards if you want to play cEDH, and buy spend money where you can, but don't break the bank to own your copy of all the dual lands and all that garbage. I think the face-to-face social interaction is pretty important. So that's why I'm looking forward to the quarantine being over and being able to get some face-to-face Magic in again. I think that wraps up for the gut check, and
it's also
our final segment before we.
For people who may not know, it is also really funny that our local game store is literally called face-to-face.
Yeah, I was snickering at that under my breath. Yeah,
screen-to-screen games.
Okay, so before we wrap things up, we've got a couple listener questions. So Tegan asks, how do you deal with burnout? Recently, I have not played much Magic and have not enjoyed it when I did play. I was dreading Ikoria spoilers, and even with Flash Gun, I still feel relatively ambivalent towards a format where I used to spend hours theory crafting for. I feel like every 3 months there's a brand new awful mechanic or card that obsoletes all of my decks no matter the format, and I really don't know how to enjoy the game again. That's a tough one. Personally, I definitely experience burnout. I feel like I experience less Magic burnout overall, so much as like format specific burnout. I like playing Magic Arena when, new sets come out and you can play standard and theory craft a bunch of new decks. But once the meta gets solved, I kind of get burnt out on that. Only so many times you can draft, the same cube in like Vintage Cube on MTGO. 60 card constructed. If you're playing it like your LGS, I can get bored of those pretty quickly because the games can kind of get played out, especially if you only have like one deck, and it's hard to own multiple decks for 60 card because those decks can get very expensive. And Commander is the format that has the most longevity for me. But cEDH can get stale after a while. It was certainly stale in the Flash meta, and I played a lot less. But in those cases, I generally move towards mid power EDH or whatnot. So I definitely experienced burnout. But I try to kind of like rotate through a bunch of different formats to keep things fresh.
Yeah, I would also say like in terms of managing it, it's fine to just like accept that you're a little bit burnt out on something and decide not to do it for a little bit. And I think that you'll get over it a lot faster if you not necessarily like commit to that, but essentially don't like keep checking. Don't be like, hey, it's been a couple weeks. I'm going to go to Commander Night and see if it's fun again. Just like, don't play until you're like, man, I really want to play some Commander. I really want to go to Commander Night. I really want to brew a new deck, whatever it is. And like, it's fine to not want to do something for a little bit. And you shouldn't feel like you're obligated to get back into it or to get over being burnt out. Like, if you're not enjoying something,
honestly,
trying to keep pushing at it isn't a good way to fix that.
Yeah, like honestly,
for sure.
I've actually sort of gone through like a couple of periods of burnout in cEDH. Actually, right now is sort of one. Not really. It's really more being busy than anything.
Mine ended on April 20th.
It's really more me being busy. But like, I've definitely gone through a couple of periods of burnout with the cEDH format. And honestly, like for me, it's just sort of building on what Morgan said. Like, don't be afraid to just like drop it for a while, like full stop, and walk away, and then like throw yourself full bore at something else, at some other hobby, and like go whatever, like get through the video game that you've been meaning to play, or like go pick up like a D&D group with another group of friends and use that to fill your weekends or whatever, or just like anything else.
Go play a sport and stop being such a massive nerd.
Just go play sports. pick up actually exercising. Once the
pandemic's over, go outside.
Yeah. Just throw yourself at something else full bore and get really interested in something else. And you'll realize like a month or two down the road that it'll just be like, oh, yeah, like I'm sort of missing this now. Like I sort of miss like brewing decks. I sort of miss like playing all this stuff. Let's go back. And then like it's just a very natural point to just go back and start playing again.
You can just do something that's like super, super boring. Like you're like, I'm just gonna sit down and watch all of One Piece or Naruto or Dragon Ball Z. And then by like, 150 episodes in, you're like, it's gotta be over, right? I've gotta be close. And then you're like you're not even halfway there, and you're like, fuck it, man. Let's Commander's looking super interesting again. Let's go do that.
Dude, I got like 400 episodes into One Piece and I stopped. And I don't want to go back.
I have read, I believe, 800 chapters of the manga, and then I stopped because it is so tedious after a while.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is for brewing, one thing I like to do a lot is give myself stipulations, and I think that can really add a lot of what's fun for brewing for me is overcoming challenges and getting to look through Scryfall for niche cards. And it's no fun when the decks build themselves, or it's like, oh, I'm going to build Locust God, and you go on EDH Track, you're like, oh, well, everyone's already found out all the cool cards for Locust God. I'm not really going to find anything new here, so pretty like easy to build itself. Well, I mean, obviously the EDH Track decks that are kind of like average, the average decks aren't perfect, and you can just tune it up, but a lot of the fun is finding like diamonds in the rough or niche cards. So building with stipulations or coming up with like new novel ideas to build decks that gives a lot of energy and excitement for brewing.
Honestly,
for me.
like
So
one of the things that gives brewing longevity for me is like it sounds weird, but become obsessed with a couple of cards or strategies that obviously aren't good. And every couple of months just come back to them and try to make them work again. And it'll never work, but just like keep on it and stay obsessed with them, and you'll just have hours of time to spend on brewing. Like for a long time I tried to make Waste not work. Did it want to? No. Did that stop me from trying? No. You just pick some cards, make them your pet cards, and like just try to make them work.
Okay, and our last listener question comes to us from Riker, and Riker asks, what do you think about Callum for cEDH? Tamer has been neglected for a while, and a Storm or Twin / mana engine, Cat, Freed, Breach, Stacks, Blood Moon, Back to Basics angle could be sweet as a value-based commander that can win the game. And I think we already covered a lot of Callum discussion earlier in the episode, so
Yeah.
I don't think there's too much more here to discuss. If you guys want to add anything before we close it out.
If you somehow made it here, just rewind the episode. And you guys your answer.
No, Matt, you're going to get stuck in a loop.
No, what have you done? You've messed with
And
the
also
natural
make
order.
decisions
If this is your second time listening to this part of the episode, carry through.
All right.
Okay, there we go. We saved it.
Good job, Lyndon. You gave him an exit condition.
All these alternate timelines.
And on a separate
Okay.
note, if any of you are doing computer science classes right now, this is what we call recursion.
Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. If you guys would like to reach out to us with any questions, comments, or concerns, you can contact us on Twitter at Into the North Pod, via our email, intothenorthpodcast@gmail.com, or on our Discord server, the invite link for which can be found in the description for this episode. Extra special thanks to all of our patrons who help cover the expenses for our show and allow us to work towards improving the quality of the podcast. If you too would like to become a Patreon, we are at patreon.com/Into the North Podcast. Thank you as always to the band Vox Cadre for our lovely podcast music, to Nate Slover for our equally lovely podcast logo, and to our long-suffering podcast editor Roadkill. Next episode will be out in 2 weeks. Until then, see ya.
Peace out.
Bye.
Have a good one.